I've done videos like this on Twitter, and it's always about 20 to 30 people and no likes. They're trolling me. These are people that probably I know or they know of me or what have you, whatever. But I really want to get serious here, other than the last video where I was just jibber jabbing. If I had the money to campaign for the district that Yvette Clarke in Brooklyn already has a seat in, term after term after term, and has done nothing for the community, much less for our country. If I had the money to do it, not as a way of bribing, I would give an incentive to those who would come to my rally so they would get something out of it and not waste their time. If I had the money, I would give out free laptops, Mac PCs, iPads, whatever pads, some phones. They might be at a discount because they're sort of older or whatever, but I would want it to be worth their while, at least to get something out of it. And that would be good for them. Everybody has a computer, everybody has phones, but it would be something. And it would be something for me to encourage young people who may want to run in the future by the time they are grown up or what have you. But if I had a rally, my first rally would consist of 4 legislative proposals out of 11 or 12 that I would have so far, because I've thought about them. I've written a little bit about it just for fun or whatever. The first one would be about revamping the Wage Act of 2019 that did pass ceremoniously in the House, but it didn't go anywhere because Mitch McConnell wouldn't allow a Senate vote. I would also want to talk about a legislative proposal about the Tax Act, and that no one should be paying more than 10 or 15% for both federal and state. Going back to the first one, the Wage Act would be based on the cost of living and indexing production and indexing inflation. And not that this should be legislative or anything, or something that would be federal, but to encourage employers to allow a graduating wage for each employee of their company, depending on the quota, depending on their skills and their success. There should be a graduating wage involved for a lot of these companies out there, whether it's retail, tech, what have you. So I would only talk about the brevity of each legislative proposal, but I would want to encourage members of the audience, who would ever show up, anybody interested in my campaign, take your stuff home, take your gifts home, but spend some time in the near future to really read over these proposals. I don't want to go over the minutia of each legislative proposal that I would have. Again, I would have, for each rally it would be about 4 legislative drafts, legislative proposals. Again, the first one would be revamping the Wage Act, the Tax Act. The other one would be about the Privacy Act, criminalizing people who hack into any cloud, or they hack into your private life and they put your private information out for those to see. There's no real law enforcement. There's no real legal enforcement to stop this type of problem. I've been there. The fourth one would be about housing in any part of this country, because obviously when you're in Congress, you're dealing with federal legislation, if you even come up with federal legislation. The thing is, folks, so before getting to that, these 4 legislative proposals would just be I would just mention a brevity of it, just a brief description of it. I would want those people interested in my campaign to actually read what would be in that legislative proposal. I don't want to talk about it at that point, not at the first rally. I would want them to do this on their own. I don't want to waste their time. They may not like me. There's people that don't care about wages or jobs or privacy or housing. They have their own homes, their own business, or they're working a good job, and they hate the property taxes. I have legislation for that, but that would be at another rally. Why am I doing this stupid video? Because I want to encourage anybody running for Congress, particularly for the House of Representatives, to have a plan in place, in that they should have if they want to work on legislation, they have to have a legislative draft, a potential legislative proposal. A lot of these people, whether it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Jeffries, or I don't know what, someone from the Republican side, or Ilhan Omar, or I'm trying to think of a Republican. I mean, I'm not on either side, really. I'm more of an independent, like a lot of us are these days. But, or someone like Matt Gaetz, you know, I think he's still representing somewhere in Florida. None of these people really come up with legislative drafts to exemplify what they really want to work on in terms of creating quality legislation, not just for their community, not just for their state, but for the American people. Because again, Congress, when it comes to legislation, it's federal legislation. We all know that. Kids know this, okay? But sometimes if you have the means to give out gifts, it's not necessarily quid pro quo or trying to bribe somebody. It's about letting people know that even if you don't like what they have to say, if they come out and see you, they get something out of it instead of free snacks or what have you. That's what I would want to do if I were able to run for Congress. I don't have the means for it. I don't have the support. I don't have the money. But I've thought about this for years. And one main thing that I thought about as far as having something to give, to offer in terms of discussing anything about my campaign, I want to provide legislation, what type of legislation that I would want to work on and what it would look like. Again, in my first few rallies, I would not go much into the minutia of each legislative proposal, but throughout my campaign, I would eventually get there. I have about 11 ideas, whatever. The thing is, when we go to these campaigns, particularly those who want to run for the House, for a seat in the House, they don't have much to show as far as legislative proposals. Neither has Bernie Sanders. None of these people really talk about specifics of what they really want to work on. They just don't. Bernie Sanders, by the way, a senator, I think he's Senator of Vermont, I forgot, because I don't pay much attention to him. He talks the same game, that is, year after year after year, okay? This guy, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Jasmine Crockett, they like to hear themselves talk. It's that narcissism in them that really, they want to affect people. I get that. We all want to affect people in a good way to make a difference, for those of us who do want to make a difference. But you have to have the goods to deliver. You have to actually work on legislation that does not exist for the American people. Just when it comes to help Americans become more independent. When you help Americans become more independent, they have their own home. It may not be great. It might be just a studio apartment or even a room rental, which would suck, I think, for adults like me. When they have stability at the basic level, they have a better chance of not only becoming independent, but also becoming politically empowered. The likes of Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Nancy Pelosi, the leadership, the upper echelons in both the House and the Senate, they don't talk about stuff like this. They just talk about, as a way of decorum, they talk about ideals, which is nice, but they don't really have much to back it up. that they actually worked on. And I gotta wonder, since I bring that up, when it comes to those House of Representatives, what the hell do they do in their office all day? Do they talk to people? Do they talk to their constituents? Do they hobnob on planes going here or there when they could really do things in office virtually on a computer? Why does Jasmine Crockett or someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or someone like Bernie Sanders, why do they have to go from place to place to place to talk to a bunch of people about the same shit that they've been spewing for years and years and years? That's not helping. That's not making a difference. These people don't work on quality legislation to help Americans become more independent, more mobile, and more politically empowered. You know, there's too many problems that Americans are dealing with just when it comes to housing. And you think you're just going to fly from this place to this city, this town, this state, or whatever, and just, blah, blah, this is what I believe in. 10 years ago, I've been saying this for like 10, 12 years, or 30 years, or 40 years, Bernie, and you haven't done anything in terms of quality legislation. Have you filibustered at least? Or, you know, like, what use are these people? I want to encourage young people to have a strategy in terms of legislation. You're not just in Congress to vote. You know, you shouldn't be there just to vote or vote for the status quo, whether you believe it or not. You're not part of some gang. You are representing your district, and if you're a senator, you're representing your state or part of your state, but you don't have much to show for it to help the American people thrive. I mean, I hope this makes sense, because the other video was just me talking about blue jeans and shit. Thank you for your time.